Welcome to Future People, conversations with the change makers, impact makers, and the future shapers. Future People is a bold, future-focused podcast hosted by myself, Dan Musa, founder of Third Way Advisory. Join me for unfiltered conversations with the leaders who are rethinking value, legacy, and indeed their own leadership in a world that's being rebuilt, from our cities to our climate and our culture. These conversations are not to be missed. Awesome. Well, today on Future People, I'm joined by someone who's built one of the most trusted voices in employer branding, Mark Puncher, the founder and CEO of Employer Branding Australia. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks very much for having me.
Mate, pleasure. Just for a bit of background, Mark, you spent more than 2 decades helping organisations tell their story honestly and attract the kind of people who don't just fit but thrive. Your philosophy has always been to be a refreshingly human, own your imperfections, tell the truth, and build a brand that is as real on the inside as it is on the outside. And I think that's a pretty awesome statement to start with.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's been a lot of fun, and I have a lot of grey hairs.
Well, you've got less than me. I've gone full salt and pepper, so you're doing far better than me. But I guess to start and to paint the picture, I think everyone listening would have heard the term at one point, employer branding, and sometimes organisations push it, they don't push it. Break it down for us. What is employer branding?
Employer branding is so misunderstood. And I think you're absolutely right. Certainly the last 5 to 10 years in Australia, we've seen people talk about it more and more, and it was sort of a buzz phrase for a while. When I say misunderstood, I think people can often assume employer branding is a campaign, it's PR, even recruitment marketing, it's the gloss or it's the story. It is so much more than that. Employer branding, so let me put it this way. Every organisation has an employer brand, whether they're doing anything with it or not. Employer brand is what makes people want to come and work for you and stick around and keep coming back each day and bringing their best, or not.
Yeah.
So we think very much about employer brand first and foremost with the team you currently have, not just future talent and recruitment. So it is about how do you attract talent? How do you ensure people join you for the right reasons and with the right motivations and right expectations? How do you ensure people feel connected to you and decide to not just not quit, but actually really co-own the journey that you're on? And the process of employer branding is about shaping that and improving that and then leveraging that to get better recruitment results, retention results, employee experience metrics, and critically performance and cultural contribution.
There's a really good piece here you mentioned about getting people who are part of the ownership journey, right? And I think every single business owner or leader wants people who feel like they're owning the journey. So obviously employer branding is obviously a really important issue and not something people can stem away from. And it's also interesting, like, regardless of whether you know it or not, you've got an employer brand. But I think perhaps more importantly, you can have a good employer brand or also a bad employer brand, right, which can be significantly damaging.
In the same way that you can have a good culture and a bad culture or something in between. Absolutely, those things really matter. We put brand and marketing and comms together. We don't make them one thing. We understand the difference, but we really look at them together. And we think not just about communications, internal communications, we think about conversations. So think about it like this. You're trying to recruit people. You need to go out there and say, well, why should you apply? Why should you even explore this opportunity with us? Once they actually do join you, they become part of the product, not only to attract other candidates and other future hires, but actually to attract customers and clients. Your people are your brand. So the way they behave every day, how they handle interactions, relationships, the decisions they take, how hard they work, of course, but also how creative they are, all of those things, well, that is how you succeed or fail as an organization. And so for me, employer branding is an awesome vehicle to do that. We talk a lot about the fact that employer branding is a magnet, a compass, and a blade. And it's a magnet and it'll help you attract great talent and put off others. That's a good thing. It's a compass because it guides your path and says, look, if we want to win as an organization and we've got employees, this is what we need to ensure that we deliver with them and for them, the talent offer and the employee experience, so that they stay and so that they perform with us. It's also a blade, because if you go out there and sell the dream and you don't deliver, you're going to cut yourself on that. And that's a healthy tension. The last thing I say is the one I've added in the last 18 months or so, it's also a call to arms. And that gets me excited. It's a call to arms, of course, to talent. Great talent wants to come in and solve problems. They want to build something. They want to take something from A to B. And so when you are authentic about the way you recruit and you position yourselves, not just full gloss, but actually saying, this is where we are today, this is where we're heading, these are the challenges we're trying to address, these are the problems we're trying to solve, these are the questions not yet answered here. And here's what that means for you if you join us in this role. That's amazing as part of the talent attraction. Critically, as we pull it through to employees on the ground, it's saying, well, not only please stay with us, we'll pay you, you do work, full stop. It's saying, why is this worth bothering about? Why, if you're in disability, support worker, if you're in aged care, if you're in retail, you can do that work in so many different places. Why should I bring my skills and my quality and my care here?
That's the blade one is really interesting, and it probably goes back to that old age adage. If somebody has a bad experience or a bad bad product or whatever it is in life or in work, like they'll go ahead and they'll sell 10 of their friends, right? Like wildfire. If you have a good experience, you tell one of your friends.
That's right.
That blade one's really interesting, and we'll come back to that and put that towards the talent side of it. Employer branding, again, so you mentioned there, communications, marketing, HR. We spoke about leadership off here just before. And, we talked about that every single organization has an employer brand. Whose responsibility is it? Or, I mean, you're going to tell me it's probably integrated, but like, where does it start? Where does it finish?
You know where it starts?
Yeah,
it's the CEO.
Yeah.
It's the CEO. People is the responsibility of the CEO. What is more important in any organization than people in terms of achieving success, right? Now, it may be that you are a single one-person band, in which case humans really matter. You matter. If you stop working, you're done, right? It may be that you're in agriculture and actually the climate or the weather is the most important factor, but actually it's still about how the people react within the conditions of the weather. It might be about your product, but it's about the people who are designing that, who are planning that, who are selling that. And so it needs to start with the CEO. Part of the challenge that I see quite consistently is employer branding being siloed into HR or people of culture or into marketing or comms. And I've got to say that quite often those teams are not talking to each other. They're not in the same way. The classic is people and culture are delivering it. And for what it's worth, I think people and culture should be really involved and invested in employer branding.
So often they're the first impression of organisation, right?
That's right.
First contact.
But you get a situation where they could invest a lot of time and money into an EVP, and they could be doing strategy around talent strategy and employer brand strategy. And then they'll go to comms and say, or marketing and say, we want to put out some social posts about our people. And they'll say, no. that channel's for clients. And of course, it's not the case. Every story you tell should be immensely beneficial for clients, for future clients, for talent, for future talent, if it's done in the right way. But to be fair to the marketing and comms folks, if they're constantly being asked by the recruitment team, please can we push this vacancy in another LinkedIn post, that's not great either. We shouldn't just be chucking out content just trying to fill a role. It's about a more holistic and strategic view to how we talk about ourselves as an organisation.
LinkedIn leadership's an interesting one, and I'm glad we went there. And you're right. You hear it all the time. Organisation. I see people look like, why are you not sharing their stuff on LinkedIn? We're like, oh, we're not allowed to. Like internally, we just block it. And that leadership piece, I'm forever saying I always get people say to me, we can't find talent. There's a talent shortage. And I always say, well, that's not necessarily true because there is talent. It's in other jobs. The problem is you're not great at attracting the talent, right? That go-to-market piece. How do you get people to take notice of who you are? How do you engage them early on? And again, it goes back to that leadership piece of if I go and take a role to market and we're trying to attract an executive or leader, and we tell them who the company is and who the leader is, the first thing they're going to do is go and look up that leader or the leadership team. And there's no digital footprint. You're almost killing your employer brand before you even begin, right?
Absolutely right. So there's a lot in what you just said, and one of the things is we'll always say when you go out to market to fill a role, there are so many great people who could be amazing for you. One of the things that bugs me is when some recruiters still talk about passive versus active candidates. That's nonsense. It's a spectrum. Every single human who works is open to another opportunity. 100%. It's just about what's it going to take to turn their head and when is the right time. I think that so when you go out to market and you put out your job ad, the vast majority of people who could be amazing for you and for whom you could be an amazing choice don't even see your ad. They never even knew you were hiring. There's people who might know about you in the industry, but they've never even considered that you might want them or that they could work there, or they vaguely had it there, but they're not there. Of the tiny percentage of people who do see your ad, the vast majority just simply weren't compelled to apply. They didn't care because you didn't make them care.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge of like job ads. I'm on the fence on job ads, right? Because they have a place, but for me, they're a branding exercise, right? To show that your company's growing.
Interesting.
To get your logo out there. I think the challenge of a job ad is if you take a standard Seek ad or a LinkedIn ad, how can you effectively like really communicate your values, your organizational behaviors, the culture you're striving for, the leadership opportunities, the projects you're working on in a one page? It's like, you just can't.
You see, what's super interesting is Marcy Powell, she's head of employee branding strategy in my team. She and I have debates about this. She's pure play brand and marketing comms person, and I come from the employee branding and the culture and so on side of things, and recruitment side of things. And for her, an ad is one of many things that you're doing. It's one. It might be an ad on socials, an ad here, an ad campaign. In recruitment, we think of an ad as the way we recruit, one ad.
I don't think I've ever filled a job. I think I might have filled one job or two jobs in my career off a job ad.
Yeah, so what I will say is we've seen that you can get great results from the right job ad, done properly. But you have, so number one, at the very least, you need to be putting out some content around it. I'm happy to give recommendations on that, but content from the team, content from the manager, exactly as you said. And I didn't respond to the question about leadership, which I should. But beyond that, what we'll say is, and it's exactly what you've talked about, if the first time you go out to market to tell people about yourselves as an employer is when you need to hire someone. Look, think about a product. You don't you don't sell product by putting out one ad and waiting for all the sales to trickle in. You have to build brand. And that starts with saying, well, who are we? Who do we want to talk to? So who do we want to hire if it's recruitment? What matters to them? And where does that intersect with what we offer? In other words, what problems they have and how do we solve them?
Yeah.
And that is fundamental brand and marketing and positioning. And then you're actually going out there and building the conversation and being front of mind. And so we talk about building your talent shop front, your job ads, your careers site, your socials at a glance, but then the ongoing conversation that says, here's who we are.
I think that's such a powerful point in that ongoing conversation, because that's a bit, and I found that, I built a decent enough following over LinkedIn over the years, right? And you post, some go well, some don't. You're like, oh, who's actually reading this? But you'll get a message or something pops in. I've been following this for a number of months, and this particular post has resonated. And I think that's a really good point there, because our organisation is guilty of not taking that approach. But when it's almost like employer branding becomes really reactive, like we've got to hire, we've won a project, we need this, and it's suddenly all hands on deck for a period of, 3 months, 6 months, like you said, a campaign. But actually not understanding that employer branding has to be an ongoing
That's right.
strategy, which is never ending.
Yeah, so we say that the three key ingredients of employer branding are proposition, strategy, and storytelling. And the fourth one is process, systems, and habits. It's operationalizing this. So we will work with some clients on projects and we will help them develop an EVP, we'll help them build strategy around this. But everything we're doing is about setting them up to continue this ongoing. It's not post-sale or post-delivery. The thing is, how are we going to consistently capture the moments that matter and the stories in our organization? How are we going to consistently turn that into content? How are we going to share that content? How are we going to, our candidate experience? What are the hallmarks of our awesome candidate experience that we're going to execute? How are we going to make sure that happens? How are we going to measure the impact? What about the employee experience? What are we actually doing centrally through the exec team, through the HR folks, the marketing and comms folks? But what are we also inspiring and expecting from our managers on the ground? Because they're the ones who dominate the employee experience.
To me, it feels like such a simple thing. You have that strategy, and if you get all your key stakeholders, your whole organization is sharing content, ideas, and people talk about thought leaders and LinkedIn. There's no thought leaders. They're just thought sharers, right? End of the day, that's what it is, right?
Thought leadership. It's one of those phrases, isn't it?
It's just thought sharing, isn't it?
It makes you want to puke.
Yeah, I'm like, it's just someone sharing their thoughts, not a leader. But anyway, we can go back to that. But if you have your whole organization, and then that's being picked up anywhere, interested to get your thoughts on content and supporting content, because And again, I'm sort of leading this biasly towards, exec search and areas I work in, because traditionally it's been, if you used to work at The Guardian, right, back in the UK, back in the old days, Sunday Times, you've got your appointment section, that's what
I remember Guardian jobs in the paper.
Yeah.
We took that online.
Did you? Yeah.
I was there at that moment.
Awesome.
I didn't do all the hard work, but it was
But you remember,
really
right, that was like where the big jobs were in the Sunday Times, right? And then it became Seek and probably LinkedIn's maybe like your more premium one now. But I'm sort of saying, well, actually, the way that humans consume information has changed dramatically, right? And everyone's got a smartphone. And actually everyone, no matter what level they're at, is on Instagram, Facebook less so, but I think Instagram, TikTok and YouTube, right? Arguably are the three main ones now. Are you seeing a lot of organizations being like, yeah, we recognize this, we should jump on it? Or is it still sort of like,
still
Instagram's a bit like, is it
still a bit tricky?
Serious childish? Is it, I don't know, like what do you see the future?
It's a real
should
mix.
we be embracing it?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing I'd say is on almost every social channel there is, pushing content about a single vacancy is not the way to go. There is always space on any of these channels for employers to talk about what they're doing and who they are and what they're trying to do. But you've got to have a look at actually what are audiences looking to do. The classic is for many years, Facebook was, it was ramping up and so on. What we've seen, Facebook still is good for getting reach and good for getting eyeballs. It's not good for getting conversion on jobs, on individual jobs. TikTok and Instagram, there's still a lot of, the jury's still out and it still very much depends. A lot of people now, you'll have seen it, a lot of people are having their employees do funny stuff on Instagram, TikTok. And I see it and I get it, and I think that makes sense. But it
doesn't have to be funny, though, does it?
And yes, and the mindset is wrong. So the mindset is, let's do some TikTok content.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, we are trying to recruit, first thing you should be saying is, well, who are we trying to recruit? Who are the audience segments that we're seeing? Now, everybody's different, every individual's different, but you can build personas and you can understand what are the age groups typically of those we are seeing applications from and want to see more. How about the people we're not hearing from enough? Who are they? Where are they? But what we need to do, first of all, is say, well, yes, where are they? But what matters to them, and what are they trying to do? And what if it's graduates, what are they afraid of? What are they worried about? They're worried about how the hell am I going to build a career in this environment? So start talking about that. Start sharing that. So people aren't thinking enough about it. The channel is really important, but the channel comes after we've said who are the audiences and what are we trying to get them to do. And then what are the channels that are going to be most useful to us? But most importantly, after that is, what do we want to say? Yeah. What is the message?
I'm getting in consistency in messaging.
Consistency in messaging, but not the same old messaging content all the time. What organizers say, look, people, leaders, and humans are really good at telling stories about the past. They're quite good at telling stories about the future, but they're not good at telling the story of today. So what organizations should be doing across all of those channels, depending on the audiences they're talking to, is they should be narrating their life story. It's literally that. It's what is this organization? And I think the biggest thing, so many companies right now are either struggling or really sort of holding on tight, and they're figuring out where they want to go. Now is the time to open the doors and lift off the roof and show people inside your organization and say, these are the things we're facing. These are not just we're an employer of choice and we'll offer you free fruit on a Friday and, extra day off on your birthday. That stuff's, it's part of it, but it's not if that's a race to the bottom, if you're going to compete on stuff like that. What we should be saying is, here's who we are. We're really proud of that. Here's why we're proud of that. Here's where we're trying to go to. And here's how you can be part of that. That's the story that talent wants to see.
I could not agree with you more. This is like, I'm finding this a massively thought-refreshing conversation, right? Because I still feel like a lot of my industry don't quite get it.
Well, let's be clear, a lot of your industry benefits from it being old and broken. Now, there are amazing recruiters out there. I work with a number of them, fantastic individuals and companies. Yeah. But they are the ones, so here's one for you. For a long time, recruitment, outsourcing recruitment campaigns or vacancies the idea was, we'll just take it all off your hands. You don't have to worry, and you're going to pay me a fair whack. Only if I hire. And that's a broken model. Yeah. Great recruitment businesses and great recruiters won't say, I'll only take 10 minutes of your time and then I'll go and do it. They'll say, I want to take an hour of your time and then I want another half an hour in a couple of weeks. Because and not just who are you looking for and I'll go and get that for you. It's why should the people that you're looking for apply for this job? What are you excited about? What are you worried about moving forward? If this person, if I delivered an amazing shortlist, what would they be motivated by?
Yeah.
Not just what skills do they have and what does their resume look like.
I agree.
But external recruiters, there's this pressure on you to not take up time and to go and have all the answers. You don't have the answers.
Yeah, but I think that comes back, like with another conversation, but I think that comes back to the contingent model versus engaged model.
I agree.
Right? And
I agree.
The contingent model for me just creates all the bad behaviours that everyone hates in recruitment.
Because recruiters have to feed their kids as well, right?
Correct.
So,
but we're feeding the kids potentially the wrong way. Whereas, to your point, I mean, I'm pretty insistent now. If I'm going to work for a client, I'm like, I need to come and sit in your office for probably 48 hours.
Yeah.
Because you're telling me about this culture and all your behaviours, but I need to come and witness it. I want to see how people interact. I want to see what it's really like.
Exactly.
Because that's what we had to go and sell. And I think you made a point before about owning who you are. And, you know, something I've got massive kind of respect for you on is being sort of honest about telling the story. And I wonder sometimes, well, I don't wonder, I kind of feel like we live in a time where people are less willing to do that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Don't get me right, the diversity of team is massively important, and getting the right people on is massively important. But actually, so is owning who you are and being what's best for the business. And there's an example of an organisation I know in Brisbane. We're a great company. We're 25 men in the organisation, right? But we own it. We're like, we're a boys' club. We're 25 males. We go on camping trips, blah, blah. We're really, really successful. And I sort of sit around, I'm like, it's kind of actually really good that you guys know your identity. You know exactly who you want. You get the right people into your organisation. Do you see sort of sometimes that there's work to be done for organisations to actually be more willing to put themselves out there and own who they really are? Do they feel it's too much? We have to tick X, Y, and Z boxes. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I won't, the gender piece is a much bigger question and a much bigger conversation,
it's a
but
whole
that
conversation.
specific angle. But what I see is a lack of authenticity and vulnerability at every level. So when we're recruiting employers, you know, the classic is the employer of choice badge. 9 times out of 10, it means nothing at all.
Yeah.
Employer of choice because some vendor gave me the award because I spent a lot of money with them, or our marketing team spent 10 grand and did a submission.
Yeah.
And some completely invisible group of people picked someone. It's nonsense. There are some that are better where there's proper process behind it. Either way, you know what really matters? If you want to be an employer of choice, be an employer of choice for the people you employ.
Yeah.
And don't worry if you're not, and for people like them and people you're looking for. And if you want to attract different people, if that boys club wants to hire more women or people of other genders, well, they're going to have to look at themselves first and say,
Correct.
Is that what we want? And how are we going to change? Because you don't just go out. The classic is construction businesses putting out an ad with the one woman they employ in a hard hat, even though she's in HR.
Correct.
You know, and it's not true.
Yeah.
So I think at that level, lack of authenticity. I also think you bring it down to leaders in the way they're managing teams, leading teams. Consistently, we know if for leaders who are comfortable enough with vulnerability, who don't need to know all the answers or have all the answers all the time, who build relationships with their team where they're trusted, they usually succeed.
Yeah.
But it's a messier path.
Yeah, and too often people go for the path of least resistance, right?
But here's the thing. People think of the bad, you know, when a manager's trying to hire into their team and they'll meet with you and you'll say, right, you know, what's it going to be like? And they feel the need to hide the negative or the difficult stuff. That, as I said before, that is the attraction for the right talent, as long as you're upfront about it. So when we do employee value proposition, we do a lot of that in my team. People will often say, how much can be aspiration and how much has to be reality, true?
Well, I was going to ask, how do you balance transparency with positivity?
Well, it's interesting you've pitched it like that, because what they'll often say is aspiration versus truth.
Yeah.
Aspiration is truth.
Yeah.
It's intention, right? So what we'll say is you can do as much as you like, but you have to label it.
Yeah.
What I want to hear, and I've said this a couple of times now, this is who we are, this is where we are. That's really great because of X, Y, Z. And you'll come in and you'll find that. But this is what's happening every day in this organization because we're trying to get here and this is what that's going to feel like. And, you know, if you think about things like purpose and values, which a lot of people just roll their eyes because it's the same old stuff, you know?
We're living in a time now where personal value alignment is probably more important than we've ever seen before.
Well, it's interesting. It is, and it had really gone there, but the last couple of years and harder financial climate for people means that people start to fall down Maslow's hierarchy and they go down to the
money.
I want security and money and trust. But it is very important. But what I'd say is that the things, you know, you might have values that are just nonsense words or whatever, they're just words on a wall. We do values as well. And they're so powerful, not only to recruit, but actually to drive change and drive behaviors if they're done properly. what we'll always say, though, is it's not enough to have a nice set of values that are meaningful, that everybody's generally behind. It's saying, well, how does each person in each role in this business contribute to the purpose of the organization, to the strategy of the organization, to the vision of the organization, and how do they apply the values through who they are? Because we're all so different, right? When you can take that core story and narrative and identity of a business and say, this is the identity and this is the journey, and you make that meaningful and relevant to each individual role and each individual person who might fill that role, that's the gold.
Well, one of the things we did in my last business is, like, everyone, we had the values on the wall. And I was actually, well, how, like, do we ensure that people are trying to live by them? So we used to run it monthly, that anytime you felt a colleague was living one of the values, you'd fill in a post-it note and put it beside the value, and then whoever had the most got to spin a wheel and win something. And it seemed to work a little bit, right? Because people started to actually think about the values, and they'd identify positive actions that had taken place against the value.
Do you know, it's super cool. We do a lot of that, and the basics really work well. There's a whole load of
that was pretty basic. It wasn't not going to be cutting edge, but
I like it. No, let's be absolutely clear that it's the basics that most people aren't getting right. And what I was going to say is, it's basics as a concept, and we're like, yeah, that's easy, or I did that. It's the execution of that. One of the biggest issues is momentum. I'll tell you one specific tip. If you're doing this stuff, it can't be manager top down. It can't be manager's choice. The manager's role is to inspire the team and model for the team, so the team are bringing shout outs to each of those stand-ups or team meetings. I think another thing I'd say, though, is it's great for have the positive stuff. A really powerful usage of values and real test of the quality of your values is, are you using them in the hard conversations? So I think about the moment when you got someone, you go, they're the best salesperson in the team, but nobody wants to be in a room with them, but they make people feel really diminished. Well, it's using values that you're able to have. Managers should be able to have those conversations. It's also saying, as an organization, and this is why it's quite interesting, you don't have values that just sit there for 20 years. You need to keep checking your values. Are they, well, maybe change them, maybe keep them the same, but are they still valid or relevant? Are they still the things that we need in order to drive the journey we're on? And I'm doing it in my own business right now. We're doing quite a lot of change and thinking about where we want to go from here, and which is really a fun and exciting process, but it's saying, what do we need to be? What do we need to do to get there? And then in terms of our people and all of us at every level, what are the behaviours that are going to be most important and that we're going to really choose to underline and identify? And what are the behaviours that are unhelpful to us? And when you can apply the values to that in that way, it gets so much more powerful.
And when you select those values, and we digress slightly, but it's a really important topic, because ultimately values are intrinsically attached to your employer brand, right? Yeah,
it's interesting. People think employee value proposition and values are the same. They're completely different, but you're absolutely right. Values really affect culture and vice versa. Yeah. And employee value proposition and employer brand is all about culture.
Yeah. And often, and it's different, like larger organizations, there's a group of leaders or a group of people who go away and decide the values, right? Or you put it to committee. But in your experience, what's... how do you select values for your organization? Yeah. Is it a small group of people? Is it by committee?
Yeah. It's listening. So I have a slide somewhere of a list of all the pitfalls you make. One of them is the exec team does it on the retreat. They go away somewhere.
How common is that?
In between the financial reporting and the bungee jump, they come up with some values. Or they get some one-man band consultant in to sit and come up with some words. Or they get one working group, so then we say the employees did it. It was one group of people. Or they get people voting via survey. It will never work, not consistently. It's not to do down leaders. Here's the thing. People think now it's all about every employee. It is, but your leaders have a massive part to play. So the answer is, we start, and we do this process a lot, we start by saying, again, where are we? What are we trying to achieve as a business? What is our purpose? Why do we exist? What makes the biggest difference? So rather than just what values matter, who are our people and what do they stand for, it's how does this organization win? What are the behaviors that drive success? Leaders have a huge role to play, not just in talking about that, but also talking about the future and saying, what are we going to need in order to make the changes we need to make or want to make? But then you need to get out and really listen to people and really understand. So we'll do lots of discovery groups. We'll also do one-to-one interviews, really understanding what is it, how do you succeed in this organization? What does it take to thrive here? What does it feel like to struggle in this organization? And
Such a powerful question. It never gets asked, because everyone just has to
the good stuff.
How good are we? How good are we? How good are we? How great is it?
No.
That is. I'm going to use that question in my when I brief jobs. That's an awesome question.
Well, here's one for you in job ads. Rather than always saying, here's why you should work for us, which is the classic employer brand assumption that's what you focus on, we'll say, here are 3 reasons why we think you'll love this job, and here are 3 reasons why you might not.
Yeah.
Really speaking to the truth. The classic is, if I go out into the street and ask 100 people, do you like to be micromanaged? Nobody's going to say yes. But there are many people who value it. They need it and they value it. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a weakness. Some people prefer, I need external pressure. It's quite hard when you run your own business because I need external pressure from others. And so when you go out there and you talk about it, so we'll say in our job ads, we'll say, we work really hard. But we do.
It's fine to own that. People feel like they can't say that anymore. It's
we'll say things like we try very hard not to have to work outside of hours, but when we are working, we're on. And if you prefer a slower pace, this isn't it. You won't be micromanaged here. We haven't got time. So if you really value having someone around you, that's putting on that external pressure, we get it, but you're probably not going to love life here. So values, EVP, job ads, recruitment, all of it. I mean, you think about your conversations with talent, with candidates. No candidate is going to believe you if you just go, it's amazing, everything's fantastic. They want to hear not just what are the bad things, but what are they trying to do? Where are the tensions? If your team is jaded after lots of change and you're trying to recruit into that team, you need to tell that person, hey, you're coming into a team that's quite jaded, and ask the question, how are you going to go with that?
Yeah, but I think that's, for me, that's what personally, I like to go deep with my clients at the front end, and it comes down to that, like, to your point, well, listen, like, what's really going on here? Like, and people saying, so you can go to and say, listen, like, brilliant team, great guys and girls, doing fantastic stuff. But to be honest, it's been 3 years of change in that business, and everyone's a bit burnt out, and I don't feel with maybe some trust issues. Like, and you give that to a candidate, and someone will say, oh yeah, actually not for me, or brilliant, I've been in that situation 3 times. I've come into an organization, I've changed. So you're like, well, this is probably the person we need to go on. But yeah, again, I just sort of challenge my own industry. How many people are going to that level of detail in the front end?
A lot of them.
There'll be a lot of them are, but I think the vast majority probably aren't. And it's just about getting a CV to a job description matched up.
Where it happens, I agree. Where it happens more is in the interview process. So by the time, and again, because what managers start to say, oh, we might hire somebody, I better make sure, I check. And but what I'll always say is, if you don't put that energy in your in the attraction work of that, but also that, outside of that, then you're missing out on great applicants who could be amazing with you, and you're driving volume of applicants who aren't going to be right, especially if you're doing it yourself.
Well, that's why as well, I'm sort of big, like, look, I'll go out and do my best to explain who you guys are and to sell you as an organisation and become your sort of megaphone in the market. But that's why I'm so insistent on the leadership group of our hiring managers coming on video and like, you guys need to tell the story yourself. We're going to be working for you. Like, give them an insight into who you are and what your personal values are and why have you founded this organisation or why have you been here for 20 years. Like,
but you know what?
That's what people hear, and that's what people follow.
I see so much of that, of videos like that, of the CEO or the manager saying, I'm hiring. 90% of the time it's scripted, in which case pointless. I don't believe you. And here's the thing: a lot of recruiters or creative folks will say, yeah, but they want a script. And I say, well, tell them they can't have one. Yeah. Let's work with them and show them. I have
vulnerability, like you say, honesty, transparency.
Well, you've literally, and I'm not saying there's never a place for scripts. There are some pieces of content that really can have that value, but most of the time, as soon as someone starts reading from a script, your brain says to you, this isn't them. This is like, it's
true.
You know what I mean? Especially when you've got, a CEO of a council going, as a world-renowned region in Australia, we are proud to be, oh my God, tell me who you are. Tell me why you're excited to be hiring, really. Tell me why you love this region.
Why have you been there for 20 years? What? Yeah.
Right? And there are some people starting to do that now quite well. We've always done that. We've always pushed for authenticity. What I can tell you, and there's a mindset among a lot of marketers and content creators that they'll say things like, oh, what talent should we use? Meaning what people should be in the videos. Who's good on camera? How awful is that? Not just is it very rude, but it's stupid. Yeah. The best content we've ever created has come from the nervous, the dry, the shy, the people who aren't beautifully articulate. If you when you go to an event and someone speaks, even if they're not reading a script, if they speak word for word perfectly, never say and ah, You hate them and you don't believe them.
Yeah, it's usually a pretty dry presentation.
Well, because this isn't true.
Yeah.
I think and are the most beautiful words in the language. And yet we've got coaches trying to train them out of people, saying public speaking is about not saying, not hesitating. I don't understand that.
Well, you're right, because it's interesting, because if you're using the arm as an ab and you're actually thinking as you go, right? You're not
right.
You haven't just rehearsed your TED Talk 15 times.
But our job, my job, my team's job, and others in our space is to really not just set that person up, relax them for the interview, but genuinely, I'll give you an example. I worked with, I mentioned the councils actually, I worked with a local council in Queensland. This video shoot was a couple of years ago, and it was a parks crew. So there's a guy who cuts the grass and whatever, and the team leader was going to be on the video, and his wife went into labour. And so he couldn't do it. It was that morning, and we were right there in the park with the camera crew. And my client said, right, the next one is Daryl. And Daryl's like the next guy. She said, he's the 2IC and we'd like him to be the person. And so as he got down from his truck, I walked towards him with a camera guy behind me. And he just said, nah, I'm not whatever it is, not doing it. And I just said to him, I really want you to do it. He said, I don't even have anything to say. I don't even, and what if I don't get it right? And I said, look, we roll and we'll make it sound amazing. Like you will sound amazing. If you hate this, you get to see this video before anyone else. If you hate it, then I'll ditch it and I'll pay for it. And the only other thing I had to do is there was a Bunnings nearby with a sausage sizzle opening. And I said, if you do this, I'll get a sausage sizzle for the entire crew, for the whole lot. And he did it. This guy, he starts talking about his family. He says, when I'm doing the parts, he says, I bring my kids here at weekends. So if they're my benchmark for the work I'm doing, this is gold for community connection with council and for recruitment. We later on went back to do their values, and they put out a call to action to say anybody want to be part of the sessions. He was one of the first people to put his hand up, but he'd never done anything like this before because he'd realised through this process that he was of consequence. And this guy who doesn't speak like he's not quoting Shakespeare, he's not a Peace Prize winner. Far more important than that, he's an everyday bloke who cares about the work he does for the community he's serving. And that's what I want to hear.
That's your employer brand.
There you go. That's the employer brand.
So if you're, I'm hopefully there's people listening to this who are in a situation where they're in marketing or comms at any of these things and feel like, yeah, agree, but I've got a sort of CEO or leadership team, but every time I go and speak to them, they roll their eyes at, employer brand. Yeah. That's my phone. That's very embarrassing.
You're all right. It's the authenticity, right?
Yes. Hi, Mum. No. How do you, where do you start? If you know what we're saying is kind of right, and you're like, I want to get my leadership team on board, but I've got barriers. Yeah. What's the tactic?
Give me a call and get me in a room with that CEO. Okay, well, I'm not being. That's not a pitch.
Let's switch it slightly, right? But you would have, I'm sure, pitched to loads of CEOs in the past. It's been like.
See, I never pitch. Let me tell the reason I say get me in the room, and it doesn't have to be me. The point I'm making is
other employer brand. No, not
anyone you like. It doesn't. Even if you're doing it in house. Golden rule. You're not pitching. You're not. If the HR director or the marketing director or the marketing manager, HR manager wants to do an EVP, wants to do some employee branding, and they need to get them on board, you're not going to ask. You're providing a solution. So the first thing you're saying is, what is that CEO worried about? What is actually on their radar? If you're not speaking to that, you're not going to get considered anyway. So the CEO says, okay, well, the CEO knows that you need to hire a load of people that you're struggling to attract, or your culture isn't great and you need to improve it. Or you don't have many hires, but they're strategic hires and it's challenging. Whatever it is, speak to that and say, this is a solution that I have that is going to support that. And show our strap line for my business is you're a great choice, show them why. It's the same with anything. It's saying, look, what I'm proposing we do is really, really powerful. It has a huge opportunity, but not only do you need to want to invest in this, but you need to play a part in it. So the fundamentals are not to pitch it. The fundamentals are to say, this is how this works. Here's the ROI. Here's how you can measure the success in this. I would absolutely recommend if you're using a partner, whether it's us or anyone else, they should be meeting that CEO.
I'm doing it.
Because especially if it's a significant investment, you don't have to spend loads on this stuff. But if it is something that you're putting your neck on the line in, then get your partner to stand up for themselves, because the CEO needs to believe in them as well. So the reason I said get me in the room is I don't go in and pitch. I'll always say my job isn't to try and take your money. My job is to show you what we do and help you decide whether it's right for you. And that's not just the sales tactic. That's very true.
I love it. No, it makes perfect sense.
You know, as a recruiter, if you got a CEO who's closed-minded, if you got a manager who's not going to nail this, there's no point because you can't add value to them, and then your life becomes difficult because they're unhappy.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Matt, you've nailed it there. Going back to some of those, I presume there's been times when you've gone to that room to maybe you've come in probably a bit too late and you're trying to reverse it, right? What's some of the biggest storytelling mistakes organisations can make or have made, or things to avoid maybe?
The scripted videos is a great example, and I'll send you you can probably link it on your podcast, but I'll send you a video I did that was a spoof on the nonsense videos. You know, the videos that look like hostage videos with employees saying they love working there, but they're just reading a script. That's one.
We'll definitely link that into the podcast.
Another one is companies. The classic one is not talking about people. The number of construction businesses that put out pictures of cranes on LinkedIn, and you're like, most people don't really care about the crane unless you're really into cranes. If you win an award, talk about the team behind the award. If you've just bought a new crane or bought a new fleet, or if you've just got a new project, talk about the team that's delivering that behind it. And then the next mistake is those that still do that, but they still make it about themselves. So the classic is the humble leader. As a world-renowned leader of 25 years, I'm blessed and humbled to have been. That's just self-promotion. Genuinely, if you're an organisation or a leader and you want to attract great talent, if you want to inspire your team and drive a bit of positive vibe in your team, and if you want to impact on client brand, get out there and say, I am so proud of the people I work with every day. Just have a look at John. John's just done this. John just completed his first year with us.
But you're giving your employees such a sense of love and belonging as well, aren't you?
We've done this in the earthiest, most problematic places. And when you share great, authentic content about your people, or you give them the mic and you get them involved in talking, and sharing it themselves, no better way to attract talent than to celebrate and elevate the people who are already there. You think about what you do every day. You're talking about the team. You're talking about who has chosen to go there and what they're doing, right? There's no better way to drive pride and connection among your team than really celebrating and elevating that. And there's no better way to win business in most industries than elevating the team and the effort and the care.
When you break it down, it's all pretty simple.
It's not rocket science, but the execution is hard, and it needs. So another pitfall people make is they do it in one big burst. They treat it like a marketing campaign, rather than going again. How are we going to operationalize a culture of storytelling in the organisation? So more and more, we're helping clients do that. Build the strategy, set up the process and systems. We'll develop core flagship blueprint content that then they use. They can cascade and repeat and replicate and cut and slice and recycle as the months and years go on.
And then it becomes that consistent, it becomes easier and it's snowballs from there, right?
Well, and what I'll say is that the one thing about helping the CEO get on board if they don't get it, show the examples. We've got countless examples. We had the Benevolent Society work with us years ago to recruit allied health practitioners into disability. And this is hard stuff. They'd hired 0 people in the 3 months previously. We helped them hire 44 people, and the only thing they did differently, we developed some strategic personas, the audience segments that are out there. We picked 4 employees who would really resonate with those audience segments, and we created content about them. It wasn't loads and loads of content. It wasn't a big campaign. We didn't spend money on advertising. They just used this content. But critically, they didn't just put it out on social. They gave it to recruiters. They used it through every stage of the candidate experience. 44 hires, they saved a hell of a lot of money. They also, though, saw a groundswell of positivity in the team. Yeah. People started engaging more, referring more people to join the company. Their employee of the year nominations, peer to peer, went through the roof. Awesome. So when you do it, it all happens at once,
Well, the podcast is called Future People, so we have to look to the future. So the future of employer branding, and we're in, everyone's talking about the age of AI and automation, and obviously that has an effect on the authenticity, which I'm sure you'll probably touch on, right? But, employer branding, is it going to be the right term, or does it involve something bigger? Like, how do you see the next 5 years of the world looking?
Who the hell knows, right? Correct. And let's own it. Let's own it. Yeah. If I had to guess,
if you had to
I'll tell you what, I won't
predict or try to guess which.
I'll tell you about so it's absolutely obvious that more and more content that is going to be put out there is going to be fake, is going to be AI-led. I am really doing battle at the moment with people I really care about. In my mind, my psychology, when I go on LinkedIn and I see people sharing something immensely personal, and you can see immediately it's written by AI.
Yeah.
How much of that, and it's not just slamming it and having a go, but it's saying it's massively lost something huge for me.
Yeah.
So absolutely there's going to be more of that. My great and strong hope for humanity, not for me and my business or for anything else, but for humanity, is that actually drives a massive backswing towards saying, not that AI fails. AI is going to be amazing. It's going to bring so much good stuff. But there is a real question right now is what is the role and what is the value of humans? And we can talk all we like about, no, we'll always be needed. How? What is the role we're going to play and how we're going to do it? And I can tell you that through creativity, through subjective interpretation of someone's story, and then that sharing of that story, that stuff is human. So strategy, creativity, authenticity, and connection, for me, that is all here to stay. What is unknown is how we're going to handle that marriage, using the systems, using the technology to amplify and accelerate without losing the absolute core of this idea of humans connecting with humans.
But also great ownership. No one bloody knows, do they? So you can predict and plan, but you're right, we don't. Reality is we don't.
To be honest,
someone knows somewhere.
I'm sick to death of my forecast, and this is and people don't even say it's a prediction. They'll just say this is where it's going. It's this constant thing of you've got to be certain of everything, otherwise you lose credibility. Nonsense. Yeah. Absolute nonsense. Keep it real.
Yeah, amen to that. One last question for you, or one last sort of thought to finish on. If you're a leader who's listening to this, and you feel that you've lost sort of a narrative internally, or even calling you straight away tomorrow morning, what's the first realistic or first practical step you take? It's
funny. I'm actually working on this with my team right now, so I'm going to own this. It's organisations are changing all the time, but I don't think we've lost our way. But our organisation has changed, and it's time to regroup. And so the first thing they should do is the first thing I'll be doing in this next phase is getting my team together and saying, this is where we're going. And you do need, let's be absolutely clear, you do need to be able to be clear about the vision and where you're heading. And that's one of the things that me and my exec team and I are actually working on right now. But then you get them together and you say, right, this is where we're going. This is what it's going to look like. Help us figure out the map. Help us figure out what this looks like moving forward. The classic example is culture. There's this mindset of
Don't get me started on culture. I call it behaviours, not culture.
Well, but there's an idea that leaders own culture, and they don't. Culture is owned by everybody, and it really is. That's not just one of those things to say. And so what we'll do is, we'll encourage our clients to do is get the team around the table and say, help us build and understand and then build the culture that you need in order to thrive and that you want and that you deserve.
Not leadership, right?
That's right.
The majority drive the culture.
And then when we ask people about that, they'll go, well, management needs to do this, and we need to be paid more. And I'm like, what do you need to do?
Mate, this has been absolutely incredible. I could talk about this subject for hours and hours and hours and hours because it's so important to the work I do. I think it's so important to every organisation, and I probably actually feel maybe underestimated and undervalued by so many organisations. Where can people find you? Where can people find you, your organisation?
They can employerbrandingaustralia.com is the website. They can check in with us on LinkedIn. They can check in with me on LinkedIn. I'm still very, very involved in the business, and so whether you like it or not, you get me as well as the team. Just jump in and say hello, whatever channel suits you.
Mega. And as I said, I feel like we've only scratched the surface, so I think we'll definitely be in episode 2 here to dig into some of the topics we've touched on and go a bit deeper.
I'd love to. Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Take care. Bye. Thanks for listening, and hope you enjoyed that episode of Future People. I've been your host, Daniel Musa, and this has been brought to you by Third Way Advisory. Please make sure you like, follow, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and I look forward to seeing you next week for another intellectual and engaging conversation.